Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Um, Jen, do we want to go ahead and do introductions first?
Yeah, I say we start. I can start. Um, and usually what we do is like popcorn around. There's not a ton of people here, so you can just kind of pass it over to the next person. So I'm Jen Jutt. Thank you for coming to the Parks and Rec sector meeting for the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan. I'm your co-lead of the sector. I am also the superintendent of community services for Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Recreation. And again, just want to thank everyone who was able to make the time during this busy season of getting ready for the summer and leading up into Memorial Day weekend. So we'll get started. And I'm gonna popcorn it over to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. I'm the newest team member for the Kansas City Healthy Lifestyles Collaborative, working with Katie and Natalie. I'm just sitting in on all the sector meetings to try and, meet everyone and learn what each group is doing. I previously worked at the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department in violence prevention and community engagement. So that's my primary background. And before that, I worked in child behavior. So I'm excited to meet everyone and excited for the meeting. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Nicole.
Hey, Nicole Brown. I work with Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. I do chronic disease prevention. So that's a lot of work around tobacco use prevention, encouraging active transportation and physical activity and positive nutrition choices. So nice I see some faces I haven't met before. So nice to meet you. And I'm sorry I don't have a camera today. And we'll go to Stephen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Van Ryn. I'm the environmental manager at Kansas City Parks and Rec. I mostly got hired to implement the sustainability plan we have over here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And I've been excited to look for ways that nature can be healing for people. And I'll go with Haley.
Hey, so my name is Haley Tessone. I'm the new recreation supervisor of the nature programming here for the City of Lenexa Parks and Recreation. I do a lot of the farmers market management here, and then a lot of our other side nature programs like the community gardens, kind of special events like our fishing derby and family camp out that we do. And there's some more that I'm still kind of getting a hold on, just new in this role. So this is actually the first of the sector meetings that I've attended. So I'm looking forward to kind of listening in.
All right, I think that is everybody. I don't know if you introduced yourself, Katie, or if you'd like to introduce yourself, but I was just going to also note that our other co-lead, Allison, is running a couple minutes late, so you'll probably see her pop in as we get started with the presentation. And she is the co-lead of our Parks and Rec sector, and she also works for Johnson County Parks and Recreation. So she's probably doing something in a park at this moment, but running back to her office. And then I can just keep going, Katie, if you want to, or if you want to do a quick introduction, and then I'll introduce Stephen. It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself real quick, and then if you want to introduce Stephen, that would be great. So hi, I'm Katie Amy. As Kelly pointed out, I work with Kelly, and I'm part of the Kansas City Healthy Lifestyles Collaborative. So I work on a few different of our initiatives, one being the KCPA plan. And within that, we have these 10 sector groups, one being Parks and Rec. And so I help to support our Parks and Rec sector. Just briefly. Yeah, go ahead, Jen. Now take it over. Thank you.
All right. And so now, Stephen, you kind of got in the mix of our popcorn, so we didn't do a completely formal introduction. So here it is. And if you want to just kind of queue up your presentation, if you have one. So I'll get into it. Stephen Van Ryn graduated from the University of Missouri with a bachelor's degree in microbiology. He then went to Cameroon as a Peace Corps volunteer promoting aquaculture to increase local protein sources and develop an export market for the fish. After returning to the States, he obtained a master's degree in ecology, behavior, and evolutionary biology. Then he worked for the Watershed Committee of the Ozarks as a watershed specialist. He later moved to Kansas City to work for the Department of Conservation as a community conservationist. He worked for MDC for 17 years before moving over to Kansas City Parks and Recreation as the first environmental manager there. He was hired to implement the sustainability plan for parks. So without any more delay, I'm going to have Stephen take over.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. That was nice. And
Well
I
read,
guess
word for word from the bio you provided for us.
Sure,
Thank
sure,
you.
sure. It's very, very good. Thank you. I don't think I've actually heard that read aloud like that for some time, and it just makes me feel really old. Not really old, but older than I like. Anyhow, thank you for that. And can you all see my screen? I started sharing. Do you see it say KC Parks and Rec Sustainability Plan on there with the PowerPoint? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear yes. All right, so this is I'll just do a real quick talk on some things we're doing over here at Parks. I think this is what Jen wanted for me there. So okay, there we go. Wait, are you seeing the presentation? Or are you seeing more the in the presentation form? Or are you seeing the other?
It's not in the presentation form.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay. Why is that not doing that then? That's weird. Let me try it again. Well, it just wants to put it on the other screen. Hang on a second. I could probably just do this. Yeah, I'll just do it in here. It'll be easier. So sustainability plan for Parks and Recreation. It was formed with in cooperation with what at the time was Kansas City Native Plant Initiative. Now it's called Deep Roots. And the main kind of real quick 4 main points were looking to take out annual beds of annual non-native hothouse plants and replace them with perennial native plants. We've pretty much done that. We've got like 3 or 4, 5 or 6 maybe beds that we still use annuals in that are kind of high profile, that people still have expectation of that kind of aesthetic. But so we've done well more than 20% of the department's annual beds have been replaced with native perennial plants. And I'll talk a little bit more about what native perennials are for those of you who don't know, although it seems like nowadays more and more people are becoming aware of what that is. We're looking at turf grass reduction. This is both to reduce mowing costs, but also the amount of pollution created by mowers. Mowers are very, very good pollution producers compared to cars. On a gallon per gallon basis, they don't have all the environmental controls that cars have. We're looking into doing some integrated pest management. That we have actually already signed up to work with a group called Beyond Pesticides. That's going to pilot a couple of places around the park system where we still put down herbicides and other types of fertilizers and use other kinds of additives to the soils. We're going to pilot project with them, and they do a complete organic turf management program that will get us off pretty much all of the herbicides and pesticides we currently use. And if it works well on the sites, then we'll try to broadly put it out to the rest of the park system where we still have putting down pre-emergence and other things every year in the use of fertilizers. One last thing with water conservation. The goal was to reduce water by 10% in 3 years. The vast majority we don't really irrigate a lot of land in Parks Department. There's very little of it of turf grass. Most of the irrigation is done through it was on the native plant beds or on the annual beds. And since we converted to native perennials, we water them just for the first couple of growing seasons at most, and then they're pretty much handle themselves after that. We don't water them after. So there's been considerable reduction in water usage. In terms of turf reduction, this is oriented incorrectly. You could say I had to make it fit the screen. This is Penn Valley Park. We're looking at converting 5 acres of land around the Scout to native perennials and grasses and wildflowers there. This season, we'll start spraying out, killing. We will use some pesticides, some herbicide to kill off the existing vegetation. It's pretty impossible to start a turf conversion without doing that. you can do it, but it turns the whole process from like a 3-year process into a 10-year process. So we need a little quicker turnaround. So that site's looking to be done. We're also looking at turf reduction at Mark McHenry Park, used to be called Tiffany Springs Park up in the Northland. Another 5-acre section of ground there that we're looking to convert to prairie grasses and wildflowers as well. We're also doing invasive species removal as part of that project. We remove Amur
Hey,
honeysuckle,
Stephen?
or yeah.
Just to pause for a second. So we're
Yeah.
not seeing the slides progress.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now we are.
Yeah.
So you're
all right.
talking about Penn Valley Park, and I think there's an overview shot. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
And then you
yeah,
moved
there's-
on to Mark McHenry, and I think there's another overview shot.
Yes, there is. Thank you, Jen. I didn't realize it
Okay.
wasn't during advancing. Yeah, so here's Penn Valley Park, and there's the Scout, and this is again not oriented with north. Well, it kind of is, but this is Penn Valley Park. North would actually be, I think, it's up to the left there, and that's about 5 acres there. And I think it's really appropriate with the Scout statue being there that the Scout is overlooking a prairie instead of turf grass. That would be very nice to have. Then we have Mark McHenry Park, which used to be Tiffany Springs, and this is that area, but we're looking to convert another 5 acres there and ideally over time we would convert more and more acres till we actually see a reduction in our contracting costs for contract mowing, or liberating some of our in-house staff to do some of the areas that are being contract mowed. Invasive species removal. This is shrub honeysuckle. For those who don't know about it, this upper picture shows just how aggressive it basically will completely become a monoculture as our older trees die in our forested areas. There'll be no recruitment of younger trees because the honeysuckle pretty much blankets the entire.
I'm not sure if it's just on my end, but I can't see a photo there.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen, it's gray. There we go. I
Yep.
think your screen blew up.
Well, I can't get this straight. Anyhow,
It's
is
okay.
this
Do
better?
you want to send it to me really quick if you want, and I can
I can do this real quick. Let me stop sharing and I'll fix this real. Let me just.
You know what? Running a presentation and giving the presentation, that's a lot.
Oh, it's not. It is not that hard.
I mean, it can be if things aren't going right.
Yeah, I have a hard time if it's a one screen. Like I like having my dual screens, so.
Why can't I? Okay, there we go. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna start sharing again, and I'll share the correct screen this time. How's that look?
That's perfect.
There we go. And if I do this, does it change? No, of course not. There. Does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
we're on
There
with creeper. There we are.
All right. So there's some shrub honeysuckle, which is everywhere. If you go in the spring or fall when it's the only thing that's green, it's a little depressing to see how much of the city is just completely covered with shrub honeysuckle. Winter creeper is another problem we have. It stays on the forest floor. Doesn't really it doesn't produce seed unless it gets aerial. So once it starts to climb a tree, it produces seed, and we really like to just at first just cut all the aerials off so that it quits producing seed. The seed can be distributed by birds. Calorie pear and garlic mustard are two other ones we're working slowly to get rid of. Calorie pear kind of invades open spaces, and honeysuckle is kind of one that invades forested areas. So between the two of them, they're trying to cover up everything as fast as they can. Oops. Okay. Our method for putting in new beds, what we're using in managing our beds, is a cardboard and compost method. It requires you just kind of go in and put cardboard on existing vegetation. In this case, this example here, you see, this was a reworking of an existing planted bed at Discovery Center. But I use this method going straight on top of existing vegetation with cardboard. We don't even put any chemical on it at all, just covered up with about 3 inches of compost. And then you can plant after a couple of rains on it. The cardboard's soft enough, you just plant straight into it. And I've seen, depending on the site, but I've had reductions in, like this site right here at my house when I did this one. there's reduction in weed pressure for up to 2 years or more. So I barely weeded at all once we put the plants in place. It just kept the weeds out, and then eventually the cardboard's all degrades, and it just becomes a nice planting. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. That's what our method for starting our plantings, and so one way to reduce herbicide usage. And I'm just going to talk about very specific plantings we're going to start doing. We're looking for some spots underneath our trees to do what we call soft landings. It's the new hot term for it. It's basically underneath your trees. There's a lot of insects that live in our trees, but over winter in leaf litter. A lot of moth caterpillars or moths will do that. A lot of other insects. So it's really beneficial to have leaves underneath the trees. When those things are done living in the tree throughout the year, they'll drop down to the ground to overwinter in the leaf litter to stay warm. And so they'll call them soft landings. And so there's a set of shade plants we're going to be looking to plant around the bottom of the trees. One of them is wild ginger. You can see the purple flower on there. That purple flower is a fly pollinated flower. The purple flowers smell like carrion. They smell. I've gotten right up into it, and it's just barely noticeable to my nose that it smells like rotten meat. But the flies notice it, and they run around. So it's a way to trick flies into having pollination services without offering any real reward to them. And it's a beautiful little plant. It's great for underneath trees, great for landscaping. Really beautiful shape to it. The flowers are generally underneath leaves. You can't quite see them, but they're pretty if you bend down. Things like Pennsylvania sedge as a good turf replacement that can go underneath our trees and take some shade. There's another carex, another sedge, that's gray sedge. These are kind of good for grass replacement in your plantings. They don't grow very tall, and you don't have to necessarily mow them. Wild Sweet William, or phlox, is a very prolific bloomer during the first part of the season, and it pairs really great with roundleaf groundsel. These two bloom about the same time, and you get this great yellow and purple color mix that's really pretty. And they both kind of are kind of semi-evergreen after they get done flowering, and they'll still persist underneath your trees. And these are all plants that are kind of designed to grow out of leaf litter. So when your tree drops leaves, you don't necessarily have to remove a lot of leaves, just leave them sit there. These plants will then come up through the leaves in the fall, the spring. That's their natural habitat. They're used to doing that. Dittany is another great little shade plant. Has purple flowers on it. And if you see the picture there with the frost flower on it, Dittany's are one of the few plants that produce frost flowers. In the first real hard freeze in November, they have liquid still on their stems, and their stems will become super chilled and to the point where they're well below freezing, but it's still liquid. And then eventually the stem breaks, and as the water shoots out, it rapidly freezes in these frozen ribbons that look like flowers. And so they call them frost flowers. It's really a pretty cool thing to have happen. Indian pink is a great plant for people who are Chiefs fans. It's pretty much gold and red like this. It blooms a little later in the season for a shade plant. And it's another just great addition because we don't get a lot of the shade stuff. Doesn't really bloom much past June. This one will bloom well into June. And then after that, it's a lot of the shade stuff kind of done for the season. Bluebells are true ephemerals. They do all their business and disappear completely by June. All the leaves too. And there's a beautiful spot off of the trail. I'm just forgetting the name of it. It's a brand new part of the Katy Trail. It's not part of the Katy Trail, but it's a Rock Island extension of the Katy Trail that you can get onto over there. There's a spot off of 98th Street, the 98th Street trailhead. If you walk next to the Blue River, you can find a spot called Bluebell Valley, and it's just about 3 acres of bluebells at the right time of the season. It's just spectacular. And if you want to find that location, I can share that with you later. Celandine poppy is a beautiful. It's not really native to this part of Kansas, of Missouri, but it does really well here. Pussy toes, another one that's a really good ground cover, and it's little. The flower looks a little bit like a cat's paw. Robbins plantains, another good ground cover, beautiful. Looks like a bit of a daisy. And most of these are also host plants. And this is what my yard used to look like when I lived in Liberty. And so it gives you kind of an overall view of what you can have this woodland-like look into your on your landscaping. So those are some of the things we're up to at Parks for sustainability. And so ideally what we would do after we get done with all this conversion is that we'll add it in education and utilize Lakeside Nature Center staff to maybe do some tours of it and talk about it and get people as a way to connect. And then I hopefully also inspire people to bring these type of landscapes into their yard, and then they can enjoy it on a daily basis. Native landscapes are great to enjoy with on multiple levels. They're not just aesthetically pleasing, but some of it's edible. Some of it can be is host plants for caterpillars, so you can get enjoyment out of seeing things eat the things you plant and growing caterpillars. There's sounds. Some of the plants turn into rattles. There's all kinds of different ways to interact with the landscape other than just one aesthetic value. It's all these different ways. And I think it's a great way to get people out into nature and enjoying it on a more deeper level. That's what I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I
Sure.
think we can do some questions if we've got any questions in the group. I have some questions if no one has questions.
I have one, but it's mostly just selfish. So out of
So will
all
you
of
come over to my yard and
Go ahead.
go ahead, Katie,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Katie.
No, it's okay. Yeah, come over to mine too, please. Especially honeysuckle removal, it's all over. So out of all of those plants you listed, you did mention at the end that some were edible. Which ones are any of
Oh,
those edible?
None
And
of
what would
the ones I listed were edible. We do have
okay, I
edible.
was curious, yeah.
There's
'Cause
things like go ahead.
Oh, well, the mustard garlic, I know that
Yeah.
that one is edible, but if you're removing it, I wasn't sure if you were going to replace it. I like foraging, so.
Yes, yeah, garlic mustard does make a good pesto if you mix it with some. It's a little on the bitter side, I think. So you mix it with some other less bitter stuff. We have used it that way. It is, but since it is an invasive, we tend to eradicate it as much as we can. There's a whole long story about garlic mustard and garlic mustard eradication. I won't go into today, but it has to do with the fact that it may not be worth the effort of pulling it. It tends to self-regulate over a very long period of time. So in heavily infested areas, it's probably maybe best just to let it kind of run through its course, and then it gets less aggressive. It puts a chemical out from its roots. It's called allelopathy. And after it gets to a certain density of it against itself, it stops creating the chemical because it's not worth it anymore. And then it tends to kind of self-sort in the environment, and more natives can come back in again. But it's a very long period, and we do still try to eradicate it from places where it hasn't gotten too far away from us. So. But there are other native edibles. There's golden currant, which is a really nice edible berry. There's elderberry, lots of berries. There's a native wild strawberry, which is delicious. The strawberries are small, but the flavor is amazing. Also makes a good ground cover and works well in people's yards. There's a whole list I could go on. There's quite a few edible natives out there. People have started growing pawpaws in their yards if you have enough big enough yard, enough shade. And for those who haven't had pawpaws before, they're also referred to as custard apples. Lewis and Clark ate them. They look like a mango sort of. And right, if you get them just right in the fall and break one open, I think the flavor is something like a mix between pineapple and banana. And you can kind of take a spoon and just scoop out the custardy part and eat it, and it's delicious. But there's a lot of variation in flavor because they're not a homogenized product sold in a store. You can get some that don't taste as good and others taste way better, and you just kind of have to go for it. So there's all those kind of things that we could do too, is in terms of ways to interact with our landscapes.
That kind of leads me into one of my questions. Like if we're looking to like find some of these native landscapes or specifically these edible items, what would your recommendations be? You talked about the bluebells at Block Island Extension.
Yeah.
But where can we find some of these other native?
Sure, Jen. That leads me right. That's a good question. We have 3 sites at Kansas City Parks that are probably our highest value sites. There's Hidden Valley up in the Northland. It's off of Hidden Valley Park. It's off near that big amusement park up there, Worlds of Fun. It's not too far from there. And there's a natural trail back there. The mountain bikers maintained a lot of these single track trails for us, which is very nice of them. And so we share it with the mountain bikers. It's great hiking. I've been back on that particular trail at Hidden Valley and found some good mushrooms to eat with a group. I was a group of volunteers as a kind of reward for some of our volunteers. We took them on a hike and we cooked them up by the side of the trail there. I brought my cook kit with me. We had mushrooms. So there's that Hidden Valley is a beautiful woodland area. It's a kind of a true woodland. It's got a high canopy of oak and hickory, a lot of oaks, a lot of white oaks, and some truly special ferns that grow throughout that site. And it's a lot of very shady type species, and there's tons of pawpaw up there. Great place to get pawpaw in August and September. Then we have in the middle of the city, we have Rocky Point Glade, which is in Swope Park. It's really close to here. There's two sides of it across from Oldham Road there. This near, it's also called Camp Lake of the Woods. We have a glady site on one side. It's a south-facing slope, so it gets a lot more heat in the summertime and it's drier. And has a set of plants that grow in a rocky, dry, hot place, and that's a remnant population of plants. Those plants are genetically linked to plants that were growing here when European settlement first came through. Since the last 15,000 years, those plants are native. Their ancestors were growing in the same spot, and they've all been growing there. So we have that remnant population that we can look at Rocky Point Glade, and then across the valley, as a north-facing slope, is what we're calling Geranium Hill, and it could go there, and because it's north-facing, it has a wetter, cooler kind of aspect to it, and so it has a different set of plants. And there's a lot of wild geranium that grow up on Geranium Hill, which is hence the name. A lot of trillium too, and other things that tend to be more like a little richer soil and a little wetter conditions. So it's a really beautiful spot to go to and see two really interesting different ways that aspect, the way the slope of a hill can really make a difference in plant communities. And then you go way south, we have True Prairie, Remnant Prairie in Derry Smith Park. It's there. It's most of the action is happening during the June through August kind of time period, and there's just it's a huge area with tons of beautiful plants. You just gotta have to hit it at the right time. It just depends on what's growing, what's blooming at the time down there. It is a really great spot to go watch woodcocks do their mating dance, which I think we've already missed for this season, but it's go at dusk. And you can watch them. They flew up in the air. They do this weird kind of fluttery thing coming down, making this noise. The males do as they try to vie for females, and it's a neat spot to interact with nature in that way. So those are our three kind of main remnant areas, and we keep trying to expand more of our sites to get rid of the honeysuckle and bring back natives so that we have better hiking ways to interact on more sites around the city, even some small spaces. We're doing it at Hyde Park and Gillum in that area. A lot of the honeysuckle's been removed for one time through. We'll probably have to get another removal, but we're hoping to plant in a lot of natives behind it and have that kind of truly natural spot for people to enjoy. That was a lot, Jen, but you asked.
I know, thank you. I was just going to add that I think Rocky Point Glade is one of my favorites. And one of the reasons I really like it is because you can go up into that area of Swope Park and it doesn't even feel like you're in the city anymore. So it's a truly like natural feeling area. And I also really enjoy, like, you can see a really nice sunset from there as well. So that's my recommendation and add on. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, it is a very special spot. You can get lost, but you can spend 3 hours hiking on trails back there and feel like you're in the Ozarks or someplace that's completely different, and it's right here in the city. So very special. Yeah. Anything? Anybody else have any questions? No, thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephen. I think if there's no other questions, we'll move on with our agenda. Again, thank you, Stephen. If anybody has anything, we'll reach out. I'll just come down to your office. I do have more questions about some of the flowers that I need to know where those are. So I will see you later. So moving on into our agenda, we're looking at doing some group updates. So I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about is just our focus of the group. And if I'm getting ahead of myself, Allison or Katie, go ahead and stop me. But we're talking about kind of shifting the focus a little bit for some of our next meetings to talk about the Kansas City physical activity plan, and more specifically, like in our Parks and Rec sector, and looking at our strategies and tactics and objectives, and more closely aligning those with the national physical activity plan. So as we got this started at the end of 2019, early 2020, I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was a lot going on at that time, and things have changed since. And as we look at those tactics and kind of move forward, we realized that we needed to look at those again, and that is going to be our focus moving forward. And Katie and Allison, if I'm missing anything, you can hop in and kind of add to that. But that's what we're going to be focusing on in some of our future meetings. So be on the lookout for those meeting invites, and we'll kind of have more of a plan as we get moving on that project with some objectives and deadlines, and what our goal overall is with changing some of those.
You hit the nail on the head, just so you know.
then-
Yeah, that's
Say that again?
exactly. I said you hit the nail on the head. I don't have
Okay.
anything.
And then any other group updates that we have?
The
I
only
can
thing
talk
I know is
about-
there's quite a bit of bike month stuff going on. One of my coworkers though is the one who's really working on that, so I'm pretty lame. But I know that Patrick with Mark has been doing a bunch of stuff with Bike Month. I've been seeing a lot of good social media from some of our group members that are being shared and originally posted. And I know that our agency for Bike Month had a really great event at Neiman Elementary for Bike to School Day. Although for my coworker, her car got hail damage, so that was less than great. But because there was this horrible storm, and then it cleared up like 20 minutes before the event was supposed to start. So that was good. We got some good media coverage and a lot of good encouragement for active transportation that day, at least.
All right, thank you for sharing that. I think for a group update, I would just add with it being Bike Month, it is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and my personal favorite, Water Safety Month. So those of you that have aquatics operations are probably not here right now, because it's T-3 days to Memorial Day weekend, and that's a pretty hectic time for Parks and Recreation and aquatics in general. But with that, I'm just going to share that I'm pretty excited about what KC Parks is doing with aquatics this season. We're getting ready to open our 2 outdoor water parks, 6 outdoor pools, and we are just about completed with our major renovation of our Southeast Community Center pool. We received some GEO bond funds for that project. I've worked for KC Parks for about 5 years now, and I have not seen that pool operate. So with my love of aquatics and that project coming to completion, I'm really excited about what we're offering this season. And I know it's a big focus for the community, having some aquatics recreation and just aquatics facilities in general available throughout the region. So that's my Aquatics Water Safety Month update. If you turn on the news at any point today, you'll see that our mayor had a press conference at our Mary Williams Neal Community Center pool, and he went down the new slide at that location with his shirt and tie on, but his swim trunks on as well. So we like when he does that. He likes to come out and take part in recreation and put on a pair of basketball shorts or a pair of swim trunks with a shirt and tie. And it's a really fun gimmick that he uses there. So that's my update.
For things on the Kansas side, I know Corporate Challenge is still in full swing. We are just over halfway, thank goodness. We've got the rest of May and June. And then speaking of native plants and biking and water safety, we just had our Shawnee Mission Park Adventure Race this past weekend, and we had a ton of teams. It was super awesome. We actually just went out and picked up all the checkpoints this morning. So we're still checking for ticks. They were real thick this morning. But the course was great. They had a biking portion, they had a canoe option, and then they also had a on foot for a 2-hour trail option as well too. And that was the one that the Corporate Challenge team did. We've also got our marina is fully operational, the new one at Shawnee Mission Park. We also have a kayak launch as well. I got to try that out the other day, and that was pretty amazing. So if you have anyone who has trouble getting in a kayak or any of that, they do have an all accessible kayak down there as well too, or kayak launch. And then we've got staff down there that can help get the kayak in there for you. So yeah, it's been great. Otherwise, everyone's getting ready to kick off summer camps and get crazy. So all the safety trainings for all of our summer staff.
All right, thanks, Allison, and welcome. I think some other updates that we've got on the list are just a reminder about implementation applications. So if anyone isn't aware, these are the purpose of this project is so that we can advance our strategies and tactics in each sector related to the KCPA plan. So we have a form application that you can get from myself or Allison, or reaching out to Katie. And we want to put funding forth for, again, supporting these strategies and tactics in our sector. In Parks and Recreation, we've currently got $9,887 left in funding, and we have funded projects and approved WeLinks, Teblo Tennis Open House, and a water safety pilot program just recently. So that is one thing that we want to make sure that everyone's aware of. And then I can just keep going down the list and the agenda.
Yeah. So I can go and take over for that. Sorry,
Sure.
I am trying to copy those links down that Stephen posted. So just some KCHLC updates is that we have a quarterly meeting coming up. That's actually June 6th. Our speaker will be Dr. Heather Leedy. She's an associate professor at the University of Texas at Austin. Her current research focuses on examining the effects of consuming a high protein breakfast on satiety, glycemic control, and weight management in adolescents. The title of the presentation will be From Risk to Resilience, Harnessing Protein for Youth Wellness. And if you're interested in joining us, it is free. So for those who are new, this doesn't cost anything. We do provide breakfast. There is a in-person and a virtual option. So when you do register, if you do decide to attend virtually, you'll receive the Zoom link a week prior to the actual quarterly meeting. So that's my update.
Okay. And then I think just one other topic that we've kind of thrown, or an idea that we've thrown around for our meetings for the Parks and Rec sector is potentially, and we're at the very idea phase of this, is potentially seeing what we can do to provide some sort of CEUs related to the Parks and Rec professional experience related to MPRA and KRPA. Is there a way that we could link up with them and kind of put, some professional development force behind these meetings, so that there is, CEUs or some sort of takeaway other than, the networking aspect of it. So we're looking into potentially doing that as well in our meetings, along with revising our strategies as we move forward. And we're also open to any suggestions that anyone might have in these meetings of how they might be improved, what we can start, what we can stop, what we can continue doing. So anybody that has any feedback on that, we are more than happy to take that feedback.
Can I jump in for an example?
Sure.
So some of our other sector groups have these implementation subgroups. So like our healthcare sector has a curriculum group focusing on lifestyle medicine and implementing that into our healthcare schools. And then our Just Walk group is part of healthcare. And then we also have the billing and reimbursement. And right now in our schools, we're kind of at the same point as this group, is where we're trying to figure out what to focus on. And one of the ideas brought forth was starting a group that focuses on policy recommendations. And we're thinking of starting one that is a policy recommendation for unified PE and starting at a more district-based level. So in USD 500, where we already have partners. So just things like that, like how do we push our strategies forward? Is there an implementation project or just a group we want to start where we can push further projects? Just ideas like that.
All right. Well, I think with it being about 12:45, we can move to wrap up and talk about our next meeting, which will be July 24th, virtual during the lunchtime hour. So please look for that on the KCPA website, and more information will be coming out via email.
All right, thanks
Awesome.
everyone. And Steve and I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.